Picture this, you're 42, living in the kind of Atlanta neighborhood where magnolia trees whisper secrets to wraparound porches. Your life, a carefully orchestrated symphony of solitude, morning tea, jazz records spinning their melancholy magic, books that never judge, never leave, never break your heart into 1,000 irreparable pieces. Then comes that knock. Tap, tap, not aggressive, not demanding, just persistent, like fate itself, refusing to be ignored. And there he stands, Jordan. 23 years of lean muscle and easy smiles, holding nothing but a duffel bag and the kind of confidence that makes you remember what it felt like to be desired. "Hey, Miss Melanie," he says, raindrops clinging to his dark hair like tiny diamonds. "Hope I'm not intruding." Intruding? Oh, honey, if only you knew what you were about to intrude upon. My carefully constructed fortress of independence. My promise to never again make room for someone who wouldn't stay. But here's the thing about promises, they crumble the moment something real comes knocking at your door. Have you ever noticed how a house remembers? The walls hold on to emptiness like a grudge, echoing with the ghosts of conversations never had. But that first night, everything shifted. The air itself seemed to exhale as Jordan moved through my kitchen like he'd been there forever. Garlic butter, salmon. The man cooked garlic butter salmon while I stood there, watching him transform my sterile space into something alive. The sizzle in the pan wasn't just food, it was possibility crackling in the air. "One of the only dishes I perfected in college," he said, that boyish grin playing at the corners of his mouth. But there was nothing boyish about the way he handled that knife, nothing childish about the confidence in his movements. We ate in silence at first. You know that kind of silence? Not awkward charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. I asked about his music. He asked about my garden. And somewhere between the salmon and the soft jazz playing in the background, hours disappeared. Time became irrelevant. When I finally retreated to my bedroom, I paused listening to him settle into the guest room. His laugh, low, rich, intoxicating, echoed down my hallway and settled somewhere deep in my chest. That night, I went to bed alone, but lonely. For the first time in years, that feeling was nowhere to be found. Morning arrives like a co-conspirator, sliding golden light across hardwood floors. And there's something you need to understand about mornings in a house, where desire lives in the spaces between words. They become dangerous territory. I'd step into the kitchen robe loosely tied, hair still tousled from sleep, and there he'd be, shirtless, always shirtless, standing at my stove like he owned it, like he owned the very air I breathed. "Morning," he'd murmur, voice thick with sleep and something else I wasn't ready to name. That smirk, God, that smirk lingered just long enough to make me forget. I was supposed to be the responsible adult in this scenario. Coffee became our communion. 2 mugs, steam rising like incense between us. We never acknowledged how he started sitting closer on the couch during our late-night movie marathons. Never mentioned how his leg would press against mine, not accidentally, but deliberately. Testing boundaries neither of us had the courage to voice. His laughter would hang in the air longer than necessary, wrapping around me like silk. And I made excuses to be in the same room, gravitating toward him like a moth to flame. Dangerous? Absolutely. But here's what they don't tell you about. Dangerous sometimes it feels exactly like coming home .midnight, the witching hour when good intentions go to die. We were baking cookies because apparently that's what adults do when they're pretending not to want each other. Chocolate chip cookies at midnight, like teenagers sneaking around their parents' house. He leaned behind me to grab a mixing bowl, and suddenly the kitchen became impossibly small. His chest warm, solid, real brushed against my back. I should have moved, should have created distance. Should have remembered that he was 23 and I was, well, definitely not. But I didn't move. Couldn't move. Every nerve ending in my body came alive, hyper aware of his proximity, his scent, the way his breath caught when he realized I wasn't pulling away. "I like seeing you warm," he whispered later that evening, draping his hoodie over my shoulders. As we sat in candlelight, the power had gone out again, as if the universe itself was orchestrating these moments of intimacy. The fabric smelled like him, like possibility and poor decisions and the kind of comfort I'd forgotten existed. That night, wrapped in his hoodie, listening to him talk about love and heartbreak and dreams deferred, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just attraction. This wasn't just loneliness seeking company. This was the beginning of something that would either save me or destroy everything I thought I knew about myself. There's something almost sacred about folding laundry. The rhythm of it, the domesticity, the way ordinary tasks become meditation when you're trying not to think about the man in your guest room who's slowly unraveling everything you thought you wanted. He appeared in my doorway that night uninvited, but not unwelcome, carrying 2 mugs of tea like an offering. Without asking permission, he sat on the edge of my bed. The intimacy of it should have set off alarms, should have sent me running. Instead, I felt something dangerously close to peace. "You always do everything alone," he observed, watching my hands fold a towel with unnecessary precision. His voice carried no judgment, only curiosity, maybe concern. I glanced up, meeting those eyes that seemed to see straight through every wall I'd spent years building. "That's just how I'm used to it," I replied, but the words felt hollow even as they left my lips. "You shouldn't have to be." 4 words. 4 simple words that cracked something open inside my chest. He was looking at me differently now, not like his mother's friend, not like the woman who was letting him crash for a few weeks. He was looking at me like he'd stopped pretending this was temporary, like he was waiting for permission to be something more. And God help me, I wanted to give it to him. When I reached for the tea that night, our fingers touched. Not accidentally, deliberately, intentionally, like a question being asked and answered simultaneously. The smart thing would have been to pull away, to laugh it off, to maintain the pretense that we were just what? Friends? Hardly. Housemates? "Please." I held his gaze instead. Steady, burning. My hand stayed there longer than necessary, longer than appropriate, longer than safe. It didn't feel like an accident because it wasn't one. It was a choice, a line being crossed, a door being opened that we both knew couldn't be closed again. That night I dreamed of him, not in lust, but in stillness, and quiet intimacy that felt more dangerous than passion. I dreamed of waking up with his arm around me, his breath steady against my neck, of washing dishes together, of reading books on the couch, of ordinary things that somehow felt extraordinary when I imagined him there. When I woke in the middle of the night, sheets twisted, heart racing, I found myself wishing I hadn't been dreaming, because slowly, silently, without my permission, he had become the soft part of my day, and I was no longer sure I could go back to the silence I used to call peace. The question wasn't whether I wanted him. The question was whether I was brave enough to admit it. Thunder has a way of making confessions easier, doesn't it? The power flickered out again at Lama's power grid, apparently as unreliable as my self-control, and there I was, curled up with a book, pretending I wasn't listening for his footsteps in the hallway. The knock came soft, hesitant. "Power's out again," he said, flashlight in hand, that smile that had become my undoing playing at his lips. "Want some company?" I should have said no. We both knew I should have said no. But shit had stopped being part of my vocabulary. The moment he walked into my life, he stepped into my bedroom, not like a boy visiting a woman's room, but like someone returning to something that already felt familiar. The flashlight cast warm shadows across the walls, creating a cocoon of intimacy that made the storm outside seem distant and irrelevant. We talked about everything and nothing, about life, pain, music, loneliness. In that darkness, it was easier to say the things we hadn't dared say in daylight. I used to think I was hard to love, I whispered into the shadows. He looked at me with those eyes that had learned to see too much. You're not hard to love, Melanie. You've just been loving alone for too long. And something inside me broke. Not from pain, but from relief. From years of being the strong one, the composed one, the untouchable one. He saw me, the real me. Some moments arrive unannounced, changing everything in the space of a heartbeat. As I turned to place my book aside, my robe slipped off one shoulder, not seductively, not intentionally, just naturally. But when I looked back at him, he wasn't looking away, wasn't ashamed, wasn't afraid. "You're beautiful," he said, voice thick with something I was finally ready to name. And that's when something inside me surrendered completely. Years of hiding, of closing off, of being afraid to want anything real, it all crumbled in the face of his honesty. I didn't plan what happened next, didn't think. I just leaned forward and kissed him, gentle at first, curious, testing. But then he kissed me back, and the kiss deepened, not with hunger, but with years of unspoken longing. It wasn't frantic or rushed. It was slow, tender, reverent. His hands held my face like it was something sacred, and mine tangled in his shirt, grounding me to this moment that felt both inevitable and impossible. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. We were both breathless, both trembling. "I didn't come here for this," he whispered. "I know," I replied, my voice barely audible, but maybe we both needed it. That night, we didn't rush into anything. We just held each other as the storm raged outside. Two people who had found something neither of us had words for yet. Dawn arrived like a gentle interrogation, flooding my bedroom with golden light that made everything from the night before seem either like a beautiful dream or a terrible mistake. I lay there for a moment, feeling the warmth of his arm around my waist, listening to his steady breathing against my neck. What had we done? More importantly, what were we going to do now? The questions swirled in my mind like smoke, but when I tried to grasp them, they slipped away. Because here's the thing about crossing lines. Once you've stepped over them, the world looks different from the other side. He steered beside me, those eyes opening slowly, focusing on my face with a tenderness that made my chest ache. No awkwardness, no regret, just acceptance. Like waking up next to me was the most natural thing in the world. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep, and pressed a soft kiss to my shoulder. We didn't talk about what had happened, didn't analyze it to death or make promises we might not be able to keep. Instead, he made me coffee moving through my kitchen with the same easy confidence as always, as if everything and nothing had changed. And maybe that was exactly right. Maybe some things are too precious to dissect, too fragile to examine too closely. Maybe sometimes you just have to trust that what feels right is right. The days that followed blurred into something I hadn't experienced in decades' genuine companionship. Not the desperate clinging of two lonely people, but the easy rhythm of two souls who had found their match. We weren't sneaking around or hiding in shadows. We simply existed together. He started doing things without asking, fixing the screen door that had squeaked for months, doing dishes after dinner, folding laundry while humming old R&B songs. He didn't just live in my house. He made space for himself in my life, and I let him. More than let him, I welcomed him. The intimacy grew in layers. He'd come up behind me while I was cooking and kiss the back of my neck, sending shivers down my spine that had nothing to do with temperature. He'd sit beside me on the couch and gently lift my legs into his lap while we watched old movies, his hands absent-mindedly tracing patterns on my skin. Sometimes he'd grab his camera and take candid shots of me doing the most ordinary things, watering plants, reading, lost in thought. "You don't know how breathtaking you are when you're not trying," he'd say, showing me those photos later, and the way he said it like he believed it. Like I wasn't a placeholder for someone younger or prettier. Like I was exactly what he wanted. It was intoxicating, terrifying, perfect. Night became our sanctuary. What started as sharing a bed, just to sleep, evolved into something deeper, more intimate. His hand would wander to my waist in the darkness, fingers tracing the curve of my hip with reverent slowness. I wake too. Find his fingers gently brushing across my thigh under the covers, and the heat that simple touch generated could have powered the city. One night, I turned to face him and kissed him before either of us could speak. This kiss wasn't gentle like the first. It was me-draw, honest, urgent. It was the kind of kiss that carried history, even though ours was still being written. That night, the intimacy deepened beyond anything I'd experienced before. He undressed me like he was unwrapping something precious, not rushed, not greedy, but with a reverence that made me feel beautiful in ways I'd forgotten were possible. We made love quietly, slowly, wrapped in shadows and soft breaths. Every touch was deliberate. Every kiss was worship. When it was over, he didn't leave the bed, didn't roll away or retreat into awkwardness. He held me tighter, his lips pressed against my hair, whispering things like, "I never want to leave this bed, and you feel like home." And I didn't cry from shame or regret. I cried because for the first time in longer than I could remember, I didn't feel alone in my own life. I felt complete, but fairy tales, even the adult kind, eventually collide with reality. And reality came in the form of a phone call on a Saturday morning. His mother, my longtime friend and roommate, was back in town. Early, suddenly, the air inside my house turned thick with possibility and panic. We didn't speak much that day. How could we? The weight of what we'd done, what we'd become, what we'd risked, it all settled over us like a heavy blanket. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, my thoughts unraveling faster than I could catch them. Was I selfish? Stupid? Reckless? I had let her son crawl into my life and into my bed, and now what? How do you explain to your best friend that you've fallen for her child? How do you make that conversation make sense when it barely makes sense to you? "I think it's time for you to go back to your place," I finally said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Just for a while. He didn't argue, didn't fight me on it. He just looked at me with a kind of sadness I hadn't seen in a man's eyes. "In years, you're scared," he said quietly. "And maybe I should be too, but I'm not, because I've never wanted something this real before." And then he left, taking all the warmth and light with him. Have you ever noticed how silence can be deafening? My house, once filled with his soft footsteps, quiet laughter, the lingering scent of his cologne on my pillows, felt hollow, like a shell of itself. Like a shell of me. I went through the motions of my old life: morning tea, muted jazz, late night, novels, but everything felt flat, colorless, wrong. The bed felt too big, the kitchen too quiet. Even my garden seemed less vibrant, as if the flowers themselves missed his presence. Each night, I found myself lying on the same side of the bed, leaving space for someone who wasn't coming home. The indent his head had left on the pillow mocked me. The coffee mug he'd used sat in the cabinet, unused, like a monument to my cowardice. Friends called. Denise called. I pretended everything was fine, that I was enjoying having my space back. That solitude was what I'd always wanted. But lies have a way of choking you from the inside out, and the truth? The truth was that I'd had a taste of what life could be like with someone who saw me, really saw me, and going back to being invisible felt like dying a little bit each day. I tried to convince myself it was for the best. That age differences matter, that people would talk, that I was protecting both of us from inevitable heartbreak. But late at night, when the house was too quiet and my bed too empty, those reasons felt like weak excuses for my own fear. Then came the knock. That same tap, tap, tap that had started everything. But this time, when I opened the door, he looked different. Nervous, yes, but also determined. Like a man who had made a decision and was prepared to live with the consequences. "I don't care what people think," he said without preamble, words tumbling out like he'd been rehearsing them for days. "I care about how I feel when I'm with you. And I've never felt more myself than when I'm in your arms." I didn't say anything at first. Couldn't. The sight of him standing there, rain beginning to fall behind him like a scene from a movie, took my breath away. This beautiful, young, incredible man who could have anyone choosing me, fighting for me, refusing to let fear make our decisions. I didn't say anything because words felt inadequate. Instead, I reached out and pulled him inside, pulled him close, pulled him back into my life where he belonged. This time, we didn't stumble into love. We walked toward it with eyes wide open, fully aware of what we were choosing and what we were risking. "I always thought love would come in my 20s, I whispered against his neck as he held me. "I thought it would arrive in a neat package ring, wedding, house with matching towels." He laughed, the sound vibrating through his chest and into mine. "Sometimes love shows up late," he murmured. "Unexpected, undeniable, and sometimes it sleeps beside you one night and wakes up inside your heart forever." So here we are, 6 months later. Him, 23 and brilliant and patient. Me, 42 and finally brave enough to believe I deserve this kind of happiness. We've weathered the storms, Denise's initial shock that eventually mellowed into reluctant acceptance, the whispered conversations at coffee shops that we learned to ignore, the doubt that creeps in during quiet moments. But here's what I've learned about love that arrives unexpectedly. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't check your calendar or consult your 5-year plan. It doesn't care about what's appropriate or convenient or socially acceptable. Love shows up when it shows up, and your only choice is whether to open the door or hide behind it. We've created our own normal. Morning coffee and shared glances. His terrible singing in the shower. My reading glasses that he says make me look professionally sexy. Lazy Sunday mornings that stretch into lazy Sunday afternoons. Conversations that start over breakfast and continue over dinner. The ordinary magic of two people choosing each other every single day. Do people stare sometimes? Yes. Do they whisper? Probably. Do I care? Not anymore. Because I wake up every morning next to someone who sees me, not my age, not my past, not my fears, but me. The woman who waters her plants while humming off key, who cries at movies and burns toast and believes in second chances. They say love is patient. They say love is kind. But they don't tell you that sometimes love is also brave. That sometimes it asks you to risk everything comfortable and safe for something real and uncertain and absolutely worth it. Jordan didn't just move into my house. That rainy night, he moved into my heart, into my dreams, into my future. And I finally stopped being afraid of letting someone stay. This is our story. Unlikely, imperfect, and absolutely true. And if you've ever loved someone you weren't supposed to, if you've ever chosen your heart over your fears, then, sometimes the best love stories are the ones that never should have happened at all.
Thank you for watching. Please let us know where you are watching from, so we can say thanks. Please don't forget to subscribe.